This past week, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez released the text of the long-awaited Green New Deal. This has been something that Cortez has been teasing since she started running for the first time in 2018, and people on her side and people who stand against her alike have been waiting with bated breath to see what this bill would actually say and what it would actually accomplish versus what she was promising on the campaign trail and once she was inducted into office. As the title implies, the Green New Deal draws a lot of parallels to Roosevelt's New Deal. Both programs appear to be designed to stimulate and generally restructure an economy, but the difference is that Roosevelt's New Deal was coming out at the end of the Great Depression, and Ocasio-Cortez is introducing the Green New Deal at a time where our economy is surging forward at a minimum of 4% per quarter and has the potential to surge higher depending on what government does with regulations. However, like the New Deal, many economists are looking at the Green New Deal and wondering what the long-term costs of such an economic shift is going to be. Many economists now agree that instead of ending the Great Depression, as many people used to cite the New Deal of doing, Roosevelt's plan instead extended the Great Depression for 5 more years longer than it had to go on. As would be expected, many conservative pundits have already weighed in on what the Green New Deal says in its text and what it would mean going forward for the country. And many of the conservatives out there who have commented on this seem to revolve around the same sticking points.
Safe, affordable, adequate housing guaranteed by the federal government, an economic environment free of monopolies, and economic security for all who are unable or unwilling to work. Unwilling to work. Economic security for people who don't even want to work, who just want to sit around all day watching reruns of the Golden Girls. Economic security provided by the federal government for those people.
They want to rebuild every single building in America. They want to phase out air travel in 10 years. They are promising government jobs and health care for everybody. And they're suggesting that if we don't have the money for it, no big deal, just print some.
These are great points to bring up, and it's something that we do need to talk about as the debate starts revolving around this Green New Deal, because there are actually people out there who take it seriously. But they both seem to come from an inner city mindset, an urban mindset, if you will. And I looked at the bill, and one of the first things that came up when I started hearing about it and was actually addressed in the bill was what this could do to agriculture and how it would be that we would continue to get food to our tables. It was a big concern of mine, and it should be a big concern to everybody in the country. According to the text in Section 2, subsection G, there are provisions in the Green New Deal to help ease agriculture into the Green New Deal slower than many other industries would have. And that's an important thing to note because agriculture works at a different rate than many of these other industries that are largely city-centric and can easily be placed around the infrastructure that the bill proposes. It may not necessarily be economically feasible for us to move our passenger industry into high-speed rail and electric cars, but we do have the technology out there that we could definitely start thinking about that and doing something in the next half century, but agriculture is a completely different animal. When we look at agriculture and we look at equipment, we are looking at the idea of changing a lot of the diesel engines that put out a lot of torque into electric motors, which also put out a lot of torque but don't have the same longevity as many of the diesel-powered equipment. Furthermore, building an infrastructure in order to put the high-speed rail or the electric systems out to the payload that the tractors that are out in the field are going to be bringing in would cut down on the area that the farmers could farm and cut down on food production as well. So there are a lot of things that need to be thought about when we look into a bill like this. It's a good thing in my eyes that they put a provision in for this, but we do have to think about how far this extends as well. We're not in a position right now where we can start moving agriculture back into being something that's animal-powered. PETA would have a heart attack if we ever tried to do that. But it does raise the interesting question. When I started to look at the Green New Deal, when I started hearing people talk about it and the content in it, even before I read it for the first time for myself, The first thing that came to mind was, if we're going to zero carbon emissions by a finite period of time, does that mean that we have to turn all manual labor over to humans or back into animals like it used to be in the days before we had the carbon technology? And we also need to think about how far out from the field this leniency for carbon emissions seems to extend. Once the crops get up out of the field, there needs to be a clear-cut plan to get them from the field to the table. And the transportation industry can be partially offset by some of the infrastructure that's suggested by the bill, but I don't think the plan for the infrastructure is completely there, nor do I believe that a maglev train is going to handle the payload of crops and meat and other agricultural goods in the same way that it handles the payload of lots of people. Freight trains and trucks both depend on diesel engines, but is the leniency from the agricultural industry going to extend to them? Transportation is just one of many industries that's involved in getting food from the field to the table, and all of them would be affected by this Green New Deal. Many of them would be pushed into obsolescence at this point with the technology we have available to us, without having any sort of means of replacement ready to take their places. The Green New Deal was sold to us as a way to curb climate change because Cortez believes, or at least she has told us that she believes, that the world will be uninhabitable for people in 12 years if something is not done to change industry in our country. But a quick read through the bill that's proposed with the full text in it reveals the fact that it is laced with industry-killing regulations, a restructuring of the economy, and social justice causes that don't seem to have any relation to climate change at all. Additionally, the bill calls to minimize eminent domain and tries to make sure that everything that's accomplished in the bill is accomplished voluntarily by business leaders and private citizens alike in the country. But building a high-speed rail system such as the one that's proposed in the bill, as well as tearing down all of the buildings in the country and replacing them with more energy-efficient models of the same buildings, just screams of eminent domain. It's something that can't be avoided with the text of the bill written the way that it is. And lastly, the bill calls for everybody to have a job, which is a good idea, of course, because everybody needs to have a job, and we could massively overhaul the welfare system if everybody did have a job. But the calls are for the jobs to all be family sustaining, no matter how menial the job and no matter how much it is not needed by the general society. This is a dangerous idea because we have heard an idea like this in history before. Where have we heard an idea like this in history before?
In Soviet Russia.
Under market forces, the United States has become one of the least polluting countries on the world stage. And yet the only thing that's in this bill that addresses the pollution that's coming from other countries, many of them developing, is some vague language in it that talks about trade protectionism and making sure that jobs stay in the United States and do not go over to countries that are developing that don't have any rules or regulations and would pollute the air that we all share around the world. I read this bill and I recommend that you do the same. It's linked in the description below. It's a really short read. It's only 14 pages long, and the legalese isn't too bad to read through. But I read through it and I don't see a bill that's designed to prevent climate change or save our environment. All that I see is a bill that's designed to restructure our economy into something that it's not and take away our free market privileges and private property rights. And it's sold to us under the moniker of environmental protection. What do you think about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal? Have you read it, and what do you see in the text that's written inside the bill? I always welcome a thoughtful and positive discussion in the comment section below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at EdsBlog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I. Thanks as always for listening to this show and supporting this channel. And remember, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Take care.
You're always there.